Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for Census Bureau Tools to Elevate Your Planning and Grant Writing. Presented today by Brian Berman and Mac Treese of the US Census Bureau. And I'm Amy Left, Compass's Communication Coordinator. In just a moment, I'm going to be opening a poll. Compass strives to reach out to all residents of Ada and Canyon counties, and the poll will help us track how well we are doing in reaching out in participating with everyone in our planning area. So your responses are anonymous and participation is completely voluntary, but we appreciate your help in completing the poll. I'll open that in just a moment. In this session, Brian and Mac will introduce you to many uses of census data and the importance of the US Census to Idaho, then provide guidance on how to begin preparing your community for the 2030 census. They'll then share many of the surveys conducted by the US Census Bureau and demonstrate how to use Census Quick Facts, data profiles, and other tools to help you with your grant writing and planning, as well as including how to quickly create charts, graphs, and maps to effectively tell your community's story. Brian Berman is a data dissemination specialist who works primarily in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. In addition to working on the 2020 decennial census in Nevada as a senior partnership specialist, Brian has previous federal experience with the Social Security Administration and Small Business Administration. Mac is also a data dissemination specialist, serving customers in Northern California and Hawaii. In this role, she collaborates with nonprofits, governments, businesses, schools, the media, and various community groups to provide information and trainings on accessing the US Census Bureau's most relevant programs, surveys, and data tools. If you'd like to learn more about Mac and Brian's backgrounds, I will put a link to their bios in the chat in just a moment. First, though, a few housekeeping items before we start. First of all, for good sound quality, all participants have been muted. If you have questions, please type them in the chat box, and Matt will be moderating those questions in the chat. This presentation is being recorded and will be available later on Compass's YouTube channel, and the slides will be available later on Compass's website. The session has also been approved for one AICP certification maintenance credit. Also, remember, I'm about to open a poll on your screen, and so I would please request that you complete that. Again, though, it is voluntary, and you can simply X out if you prefer not to complete it. But with that, I will thank you again for joining us today, and I will turn my screen over to you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Amy. Great to be here. I'm excited. What a great group we have today. I can speak for Mac as well. We're just thrilled to be able to spend a couple hours with you nice folks this afternoon. I appreciate the introduction very much, Amy, and I also want to especially thank you for all you've done to help put this great event together. We're really excited. We've got two trainings, really, what we're going to do today. So the first one, this will be from about 1 to 2, is we're going to, as Amy said, talk a little bit about background with the decennial census, some tools to help begin planning for 2030, but really focus on how you can use census data to help with your grant writing, fundraising, and outreach. And then hopefully you'll stay for the session starting at 2:15. We're going to teach a special tool, perhaps my favorite tool, Census Business Builder, which is a great tool. It's not just for businesses. It's got a deceitful title. We're going to explain not only how small businesses and local government can leverage the tool to help attract businesses or expand into your community, but we'll also show how nonprofits and community organizations use the tool to help with their planning. So that's a really great tool. That's coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. Again, Mac and I are part of the data dissemination branch, which is just a fancy way of saying we are data trainers. I'm located in the Seattle area. My job is to provide free trainings on these data tools to wonderful organizations like yourselves. If you have questions about the tools you learned about today, I'll also preview some other trainings you might be interested in the future. Please send me an email and we'll set up a free training like we're doing today. But with that, and then if you have questions, Mac is super smart, just great. We're really excited to have her here too. Put those questions in the chat and I'm sure she will give you the very best possible answer. And if Mac feels that the question might be good for the general discussion, she'll come off mic and jump in. With that, let's get going. All right. So the Census Bureau is the largest statistical agency in the government. You probably are familiar with us with reference to the decennial census, which we'll talk about, I promise, in a little while. But more than that, it's 130 censuses, surveys, and estimates each year completed by the Bureau. The two we'll focus on this afternoon are really the decennial and the American Community Survey. But I added these additional 9, or additional 7 really, onto this slide because the first tool that we're going to look at today, called Quick Facts, is going to collect and easily present data from all 9 of these censuses and surveys in one easy to access tool. So I'll refer back to the slide coming up. But first, let's start with the decennial census. You, of course, remember it last filled out in 2020. It's been done every year, every 10 years, excuse me, since 1790. It's mandated by Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. And you can see the text on the screen there. Two main purposes, really, for the decennial census. The first is apportionment, excuse me, of the House of Representatives. The map I have here on the screen is showing the apportionment after the 2020 census. The states colored in green added a seat based on the count of the 2020 census. The state in dark green, Texas, added 2 seats. And then the states colored in purple lost a seat based on the count. So the way it works, as I'm sure you likely know, is that we set the number of Congress people that folks get in Congress each year, or for the next 10 years, based on that count in 2020. So for political power, it's super, super important that we get a full and complete count. I know that some of you likely have seen in the news that Idaho, or I've seen, at least I have, news reports speculating that Idaho, based on the population growth, might be in line to earn an additional seat in Congress. I believe Idaho hasn't added a seat in Congress for more than 100 years. So this census could be one of the most important censuses coming up in 2030 that Idaho has ever had. So it's really important that we work together to get that complete count. I would just caution you when you see those news reports. I worked in partnership in 2020, and I saw a lot of reports before the census speculating which state may or may not get an extra seat. It's a pretty complicated formula. Mac's going to put a link in the chat showing the apportionment formula. It's very complicated, and it's, I think, very, very difficult to speculate going forward. It averages out to about 1 congressional seat per almost 800,000 people. So if, Idaho's population passing 2 million, you can see we're getting pretty close to reaching that threshold. But again, it's all relative to changes in population in the other states. So I think it's very difficult to speculate whether Idaho may or may not be in line. But I can tell you that the only way you'll get that seat for sure is if we can get everybody counted in Idaho. Before I move on to the second use of the decennial census data, I do want to highlight the example of New York. New York had 27 seats before the 2020 census. If 95, just 95 more people would have been counted in the entire state, New York would not have lost that 27th seat. So again, every single person counts with reference to political power, especially for a state like Idaho trying to go right from 2 to 3 seats. That's a big jump. So the second reason, even if let's say, for example, Texas, who has had a lot of growth, eats up a lot of the apportionment coming from the 2030 census, even if it's not political power, the decennial census is super important, especially for a growing state like Idaho, with reference to federal monies. This is a chart from a 2023 paper that Mac's going to put in the chat. And it showed, this is by the Census Bureau, and it showed that 2.8, top line right here, $2.8 trillion in federal funds were allocated to the states based upon how many people were counted in the decennial census. So the way to think about it is if we mess up, we don't get everybody counted in 2030, these funding levels get locked in. right, for the next 10 years. And you can see a lot of very important programs that a lot of folks on this call are working on, right? You see the 3 Medicares are on here. You see Pell Grants, Section 8 housing, school lunch, SSI. I used to be an SSI claim specialist, super, super important. And I'm sure that everyone on the call cares about highway planning and construction funds. For a growing state like Idaho, if you have a lot of people move into the state, but then we don't get everyone counted and you get undercounted so that these funding levels aren't what they're supposed to be. An example I like to use is if you had 10 children in a classroom, but you only really had funding for 5, right? Something we really, really want to avoid going forward, especially because those funding levels are going to get locked in. So it's really important beyond political power. It's making sure that the folks of Idaho get all the federal monies that you're entitled to. And with that, I'm going to show you our first tool. It's already time. We have this great site. So you're thinking about what can I do? It's only 2025, but how can I start planning to make sure that Idaho gets that complete count? I want to make sure Idaho gets every federal dollar we're entitled to. I recommend this is a great place to start. This is showing the self-response rate from 2020, and it's broken down really, really well into different geographies. So you can see on this front page where Idaho ranks relative to the other states. Idaho is in the top 20. Great job. That's really, really great. Great start there. But then we can also break down. So you can see, I like this example. Oregon self-response rate 69.2, Idaho 69.3. Way to go, right? Got them good. But if we go in here, we can get more specific information. So we can go to Idaho, sort it like this. And then I always invite you to look first at county. Oh, and then now we'll try it. It'll get a little tricky on you there. Beautiful. So this is a color-coded map, right? So that 69.3% self-response rate, not shockingly, was not uniform across the state, right? You can see the variance. So as we're thinking about planning for the 2030 outreach campaign, you can see immediately from the county map, the 39 counties, which ones likely need the most attention. That I think Idaho's goal, and I don't want to speak for Amy here, but I think the goal is to beat Minnesota's top rate at 75%, right? There's no reason Minnesota should be better than Idaho, right? I don't think so. But to get there, we're going to have to improve the self-response rate in some of these counties that are colored in orange and yellow. So when we start thinking about complete count committees, it's a little early to start organizing the committees, and by not too early. I would say maybe we're a year or two away. But I recall, at least from the ones that I built back in Nevada in 2020, we were doing more of a topic based. We had a committee based on early childhood, like young children are a harder to count community. People that didn't speak English as a first language is a complete count committee, and so on and so on. I'm going to propose and help partners like yourselves build a plan, a more geography-based complete count committee structure. Whereas because we have the data based on 2020, and then we'll also provide a data point called a low response score, which is not published for 2030 yet, that'll combine the 2020 self-response rate along with, last time it was more than 20 variables, that I can help you hyper target which areas you'll get the most outreach in. So as you're thinking about outreach for the census, know that about 6.5 out of 10 people will self-respond on their own. So you only have a finite amount of time and resources. So you want to focus on the other 3.5 people, right? For example, it would make a lot of sense for me in a partnership job to reach out to Amy, right? To be like, Amy, the census is really important. Did you see this chart? We got to make sure we get all of our federal funding because Amy's already going to self-respond, right? That doesn't make sense. So I really want to focus on the folks that are not inclined to self-respond on their own and help raise awareness why it's so important, right? That they are using, everyone uses highway and planning construction funds, but everyone is either using a lot of federal monies or knows and cares about someone who is. So we can ask them to do their part. And you can use this site here to kind of get an idea of where you want to start building those relationships, right? Because it's going to be those complete count committees, that's a volunteer effort, right? And with such a big state geography-wise as Idaho, we want to be able to focus on these areas that are colored in yellow and orange. And then as we get those low response scores coming out, I will work with organizations like yourself to really emphasize which counties and tracts. And look at what else you can do here. Look, if you click on tract, we can get this down. We're going to talk about geographies in a moment here. A tract is essentially a neighborhood. So you can see here in Ada, by the way, wonderful. I mean, come on, 79%, that's wonderful. But both Ada and Canyon did very well last time. But Canyon, as we're going to see in some of our population stats a little bit later, a lot of growth in Canyon County, like double-digit percent growth since the 2020 census. So in order to keep up that high response rate for Canyon, so let's just pull it up right here so you can see it. Right, to keep up a 76% response rate, we're really going to have to double our efforts to make sure that everyone who's moved in gets counted. If I go back to Ada, I just want to highlight something else, that our hope as we organize heading toward the 2030 for our complete count committees is that we can get volunteers, not just in the counties where we need help, but we can use the data to get down to the neighborhood, right? If I zoom in here and I start dragging along, oh, to get more information, click off. So you can see, right? I can see which neighborhoods in Ada County did not respond the way that we would have hoped. So you can even get an idea, not just at the county level, but at that neighborhood level. So our hope is that we build our complete count committees going toward 2030 in the years, next year and the following years, is that we have volunteers that are living and working in these communities that need the most outreach, that know the community the best, that know the certain unique ways that we can reach the folks that need to be informed of why this is so important. It's not intuitive that there are trillions of dollars at stake if we don't get everybody counted. So you can use this tool to start with your planning. And then as we get those low response scores, the combination of variables that help us predict, I'll even work with you. I promise I will, because this is my passion. Idaho has about 460 census tracts total across the state. We'll come up with a plan to really hyper focus on the 100 tracts that are in need the most, right? Using that kind of Pareto principle, if 20% of a sample creates 80% of an effect, right? We'll focus on the 20% of tracts that are depreciating our self-response rate by 80%. So I'll help you develop a plan, but then your input is much more important than the data I can put together on my fancy maps, because you live in these neighborhoods, you know these folks. There's no single way to best reach people, right? It's your input. I remember from partnership in 2020, all the best outreach strategies, I unfortunately did not come up with one of them, as much as I would like to pretend I did. All of the greatest ideas, all the most effective strategies came from volunteers and members of complete count committees. So your help is super, super important for the next 10 years, 15 years for the future of Idaho. Okay, that was my 2030 partnership spiel. Thank you for listening. Okay, let's transition to how, right? It's not 2030 yet, Brian. How can you use census data now to be more effective in your work with grant writing, with fundraising, with outreach planning? That's what I'm going to focus on the rest of this hour on. And to do that, I
Yeah.
want to talk about the primary
Brian,
source. Yes, Matt, go ahead.
right before you do that, we do have a question about the census tract self-response rate, which you just showed earlier. That only
Sure.
goes to the tract level. It doesn't go to the block level, correct?
Yes, correct. But tract is pretty good. Block would be great, but tract is really just 4,000 people. And when I did a lot of the work in decennial outreach in 2020, we dealt in tracks, and I have to tell you, I didn't feel a need to get more specific than that. I used to drive around when I was working I was really based in Clark County, Nevada, the Las Vegas area. I would go into the tracks, like the ones that were colored in yellow here, and the perimeter is not that big in a lot of these, especially in places like Ada and Canyon where there are a lot of people. And I would, for areas I wasn't that familiar, I would drive around and try to figure out, hey, where do these people live that are I'm concerned about self-response, and then what are some optimal ways of reaching out to them. So I think focusing on a track level, and that's a great question, it's a sufficient geography to be effective, at least in my limited experience. Thank you for that question. I want to transition again. I want to talk about the American Community Survey and how we can use the American Community Survey. We're going to work through some examples coming up here on how the American Community Survey can help you be more effective with grant writing and outreach. But before I do that, I want a quick explanation of how the American Community Survey came into being. I like to do this. I mean, I like American history, so I like to do this anyway, but it helps you, at least in my own writing, if I know where things come from and I got a basis, I can write with more power and strength, right? If I'm not just writing about a survey, I just, beyond knowing it's called the American Community Survey, but what it is really. So I think this is worth a minute of explanation. You can see on the chart here, from 1790 to 1930, there was one census form used for all households, right? They had an enumerator, would go door to door. It was expensive and difficult, and essentially ask all folks all the questions on the census form. Over this period, the number of questions increased dramatically from 4 questions in 1790 to 13 questions by 1850 to 30 questions by 1890. By 1940, the decennial census had 35 questions. This is the first year, 1940, that the Bureau included what's called a 15-question supplemental questionnaire to 5% of the population. So every household was asked 35 questions, and a sample of 5% of the population was asked the additional 15 questions. A fun fact, one of those questions on the supplemental questionnaire in 1940 was, do you have a social security number? Right? They were working on, the act was passed in 35. You can't begin the social security program if we don't know if everyone has a number. And so that's really why, even if it's called supplemental, there are very important information on those supplemental questionnaires. Over time, the number of questions every household was asked was shortened, with the majority of questions only to a small sample via the supplemental questionnaire. By 2000, the decennial census had 7 questions that went to every household, with the additional sample getting 45 questions. After extensive testing of what's called the rolling survey technique, the Census Bureau, and they began testing this in the 80s, the Census Bureau began the American Community Survey in 2005 as a replacement for the supplemental questionnaire of the decennial census. So instead of a small percentage of households getting that large batch of questions, it was 45, right, in 2000, they started getting the data they needed from the supplemental questionnaire on a rolling yearly basis via the American Community Survey. Thus, in 2010 and 2020, only the short form census was used in the decennial, and that was the one you recall from 2020 that was just 9 questions long. The data we previously got from the supplemental is now obtained not every 10 years, but yearly via the American Community Survey. So you can see, and I like to just show this, is that the technique that the statistical sampling and the survey technique that we're using, that we're relying on for the American Community Survey data, has been in effect for more than 80 years. And yet the data quality has improved greatly because we're using that rolling survey technique, and we are publishing now every year instead of just every 10 years, which is in the middle of a decade where we are now. We're not going to be relying on data from the 2020 census that was collected the year before, but we're going to have better up-to-date data. A little bit more about the American Community Survey. Currently, it's surveying 3.5 million addresses across the country every year, and it's really on a monthly basis. So you can think of it as 290,000 surveys are sent out each month, and the Census Bureau works very, very hard to get these responses back. One of the ways we really these presentations are important to us is that if you work with folks that receive an American Community Survey form or a postcard, really the first way it comes is a postcard in the mail asking people to respond online, that you please encourage them to respond. because the Census Bureau is spending billions of dollars in fund and non-response follow-up in the same way they have to do for the decennial to get folks to self-respond to these surveys. And you can help us save taxpayer money by encouraging those you know who receive an invitation to respond to go online and easily respond. Currently, the survey is covering more than 40 topics. It's gotten even bigger. Last, I believe the 2023 had 72 questions on it. And I believe it's bigger now because they've added questions, which I'll talk about in a second. Similar to the decennial, it informs how trillions of dollars in federal funds are distributed, supporting 300 evidence-based federal government uses. The most important parts of the slide, bottom 2 points. Data is released in 1 year and 5-year estimates. I'll talk about the difference in a moment. With the first year of data from 2005 on the most recent American Community Survey data is the 1-year estimate from 2023 in the 5-year estimate, which is 2019 to 2023. Oh, look at this fun chart. All right. So you might be, okay, you're like, okay, 72 questions, but what's really on this survey, Brian? What kind of data can I get for the work that I'm doing in my community? Well, the answer is a lot. I like this slide because it divides the different topics into the 4 categories: social, economic, demographic, and housing. I'm going to show you a tool to get a better idea of what specific data is available in a moment. Before I do that, I want to highlight the new questions on the 2025 American Community Survey. Starting next year for larger geographies, which I'll talk about in a moment, we'll be able to get data on solar panels and electric vehicles. Both were added to this year's American Community Survey. So if you're referencing this slide in the future and you're like, well, I thought Brian said I could get data on electric vehicles. It's not published yet, but those 2 topics are included on this year's survey with data to come in starting next year. So that is super exciting. So let's go to our second tool. So you'll be thinking about later, okay, I could probably use some of this data here, but what specifically can the Census Bureau tell me about these different topics? We're going to go to your new homepage after today's presentation. I know everyone will make this our homepage. It's the Why We Ask question website. This is terrific, okay? So I told you there are lots of questions on the American Community Survey. It's going to break down the different topics or different questions by topic to make it easy for you to sort. And you can see all the different topics on here. I'm going to focus on disability as an example. So if you scroll down, if there's questions about privacy, that's answered here. You scroll all the way down here, it's going to give you some information on how this disability data specifically helps inform federal funding and different programs that use the data from these questions. But most importantly, it's going to show you the questions themselves. So you've heard the cliche, what gets measured gets managed, right? With the Census Bureau, what gets asked gets tabulated or hopefully put into a fun and exciting tool, which we're going to see a few today. So if you see a question, you can know that there is data likely on data.census.gov or one of our tools, a couple of which I'll show you today, about this data available to you, right? So thinking about disability, the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey doesn't just ask, does the respondent report having a disability, but specifies disability. So you can see there's a question about hearing impairment, vision impairment, ambulatory impairment, cognitive impairment, right? There are 6 different disability questions. So you know, even if you don't see it on one of the tools I show you today, that this data is available because it's being collected. So if you're wondering, is there data available? Can the American Community Survey answer a data need or question that I have? I always recommend starting with the Why We Ask question page. Because if you can find the question, you can find the data.
Hey, Brian.
All right. Yes, Mag. Hello.
Yeah, we have one more question since you're already on that page. It's about since you brought up the electric vehicles, I know they were asking if e-bikes are included on that question. So maybe you can show them the question on electric vehicles, but I don't think electric bikes are included, but maybe you can just showcase that.
Sure. Excellent idea. Let's see if it's under. It is vehicles available and electric vehicles. I didn't make it up. See, it's really on there. I think it was just a test to see if I made that up. So let's see what the question.
Perfect. Yeah.
Let's see what the question says. So I would say no, based on 14. So that would be but that is an excellent use, and I appreciate that question very much. An excellent use of the why we ask question page, right? You're not sure if electric bikes are included. What does the question say? And then you can find the answer right here. Thank you for that question. I like any question that promotes the why we ask question page. Awesome. Great job. Okay. I'm going to make sure we have time for our examples. I am full of examples. We'll try to get through as many as we can. But before we can do that, we have to go to everyone's favorite slide, geography slide. So you can get data by topic, but it's really important to understand all the different geographies that census data is available at. And I'm going to emphasize a few as we look at this. The way to understand this great chart, where the lines connect, that's how the different geographies nest. A place, this is a fun term, this is a city, right? Boise, Meridian, Nampa, those are places, okay? I don't know why they're called places, but they're called places. One of the geographies we'll look at today is called a zip code tabulation area. This is analogous to like a postal code area. Sometimes for like a larger jurisdiction, maybe you're in Canyon. I'll use that as an example later. That you're in Canyon County. You don't want data for all of Canyon, but maybe a specific part of Canyon. So you may want to pull up data at the zip code level. So we'll look at that. That's a great way to pull data. What's really, really great about the American Community Survey is that it's one of the few, if only, data sources that can get you all that great demographic, housing, and socioeconomic data down to the neighborhood level. So when I say neighborhood today, I mean census tract. And we're going to see a lot of tracts, both in this presentation and the next. A tract is just a neighborhood of about 4,000 people, but can be up to 8. It's usually about 4. And the important takeaway, census tracts nest into counties, which you can guess, nest into states. So long as you can remember that tracts nest into counties, you're going to be fine. That's really the most important part of the slide. All right. So I said to you, there are the 1 year and the 5 year estimates from the American Community Survey. What is the difference? Okay. So 1 year estimates are only available for geographies of 65,000 or more. 5 year are also available. So for larger geographies, right, an Ada County, a Canyon County, you can get both a 1 year and a 5 year estimate. For geographies fewer than 20,000 people, only 5 year estimates are available. Okay, so when we're looking at data at the neighborhood level, those are always going to be 5 year estimates because there are 4,000 people. And last I checked, 4,000 is less than 20,000. Here's the typical release date. So if you're looking for the most up-to-date data, I know that fall is, Bronco football season, but it's also perhaps just as importantly, I wouldn't say more importantly, just as importantly, data release season. We've got the 1 year estimates for the larger geographies, those come out in September, and then the 5 year estimates come out in December. And our friends in DC have already provided the dates for when the 2024 data is going to be released. So you'll have this, and you'll know exactly the day that the data is going to be released this year. They are on top of it, unlike me. Okay. One more slide, and then there's no turning back. We're going into the tools and examples. Just a quick summary of what the difference is. I know it can be a little confusing. The American Community Survey is an estimate, right? 3.5 million surveys a year, right, across the whole country, whereas the decennial census is an official count. So when you're writing about, in your grant writing, and referring to ACS data, American Community Survey, I'll use that acronym going forward, ACS, you would say the American Community Survey estimates such and such data point, okay? And again, that data is coming out every year. So there are a lot of tools. Census Bureau has, I think, about 60 tools currently. I certainly don't know how to use every single tool, but I know some of them, including the ones on this slide here. There are some really great tools. I got a slide coming up talking about possible future trainings that your organization might be interested in. But the two we're really going to focus on in this first training are QuickFacts and data.census.gov. You really only need those two tools to get a lot of the great data for your grant writing. All right, tool number one, QuickFacts. QuickFacts is a great tool. I want to get information quickly. Right, good. I like an intuitive title. Okay, you want to use QuickFacts when you want to make comparisons of side-by-side geographies. Right, I want to compare the 5 largest cities in Idaho, which is we're going to do that in a second. This is a great way and a very fast way to get that data. And the only caveat is it has to be a population of 5,000 or more, and it has to be a state, county, or city, right? Zip codes are not in QuickFacts. We'll have to go somewhere else for that. But for any sort of incorporated city, state, county, 5,000 people or more, we can get data in the QuickFacts. So we were talking about how to get to QuickFacts first. I might just go to Google, QuickFacts, like that. So you see the front page like this. So we were talking about Idaho before. To get it geography, just type it in right here. So you're seeing population growth, right? Let's just look at Idaho for a second. I can take this off of here, right? Idaho's population now past 2 million, right? What's really great about QuickFacts is you can get the most up-to-date population data. You don't have to go into census.gov and pull in the complicated spreadsheets from the population estimate program, which can be a little difficult, as I know from personal experience. Instead, if I want to know what's the most up-to-date population data, go to QuickFacts and just type in Canyon or Ada or Idaho here, and you can get an idea. And why I like this is it shows the relative differences, right? It shows you, right? Population in 2010 was, 1.5 million. By 2020, 1.8, and we're already over 2 million here. And look at that. Look at that population percent change. 8.8%. That is no joke, right? That is some serious growth. So that is really exciting for Idaho. But again, when you see this and you're thinking about your 2030 planning for self-response to make sure we get everybody counted, if the population's grown that much, that means those are people that were not in Idaho, that weren't part of the 2020 effort. So it might be folks you really need to talk to, right? Oh, so just super important to think about. Whereas like we're going to see that most of that growth is in Canyon, or a lot of it is in Canyon. That though Canyon had that 76% self-response rate in 2020, with such growth, I think the outreach is going to be really important. So you don't just want to rely on what the self-response rate growth was in 2020. You want to really focus on the places that are growing a lot as well. So you can use QuickFacts to help you plan for that. So to help us get an idea on how to use a few of the tools for how to use for grant writing and fundraising, for planning, I wrote some hypothetical exercises. Disclaimer, really important disclaimer, especially because it's being recorded. Okay, these are hypothetical grants written by me that are not related to any sort of real grant. As you can see, it says hypothetical here, okay? So just to make sure we're very clear, this is not based on any real grant or any real grant application. These are just hypotheticals that I drafted to help elucidate how this data could be used. Just only I'm saying it could be used this way to help you, okay? So let's start with hypothetical exercise 1. The hypothetical grant, broadband access for people with disabilities in Idaho. An organization wants to apply for funding to help the population with disabilities in Caldwell that needs assistance in connecting to the internet. The organization believes the need is greater in Caldwell than the other large cities in Idaho. Can QuickFacts enhance a statement of need? Right? So you could write based on my, talk around town, based on the people I talk to, I think that our need for this type of grant funding is important. Or you could use QuickFacts to quickly and easily get data and charts that you can paste right in to your grant writing to help support your claim. And to do that, it's very easy. So we will put some of the cities in here. Make sure you get the right Caldwell. We just want Boise. That's a nice city. We'll put that in there. We're going to spell Nampa correctly. And it works really well if you spell the cities correctly, just as a pro tip. Meridian. And then we'll put in Idaho Falls. Perfect. See how fast that was? Very, very easy to do. So we already talked about population, but I'll just stop here and emphasize these Canyon County cities. 18% population growth, 16.8%, 21 for Caldwell. Oh my gosh, that is no joke, right? You can see why I speculate that I think Canyon County is going to be very, very important for the 2030 outreach. But look what other data is here. You've got age and sex data, race and Hispanic origin data, things about population, housing data. If you want to know quickly what's the median gross rent in a city or county, it's right here. Right, you want to get data about language other than English spoken at home. That's here. Persons per household over here. You want data about computer and internet. That's over here as well. Educational attainment. We've got data about disability and health insurance, some economy data. We got income and percent in poverty down here. You can get data about the ownership of certain firms. If you get X's here, the sample size might be too small. You might have to go up to the county or the state level to get data. And then also there's geography data. So you can see if the boundaries of a city or county have changed and changed how. And then you can also see a population per square mile and see how that's changed. So population densities down here at the bottom. I want to talk about the importance of being careful about not comparing unlike geographies. And I'm going to use health insurance to do so, which is down here, right here. So you see this caution triangle here? You're not sure what it means. If you hover over it, it's going to tell you what it means, or you can scroll to the bottom of the page. But it says here, estimates are not comparable to other geographic levels of health estimates. So you remember that first slide we looked at that had the 9 different surveys? You don't want to compare unlike geographies because the source might be from a different survey or estimate. And we'll use health insurance to get a clear example of that. So if when you click on this I and you want to find out which of those 9 is the data coming from, it will tell you here. And as we scroll down, you see national level health insurance data is coming from the current population survey, state level, the 1-year American Community Survey estimate, county level is the small area health insurance estimate, and then sub-county, like city, like we're looking at now, the 5-year American Community Survey estimate. So if you were comparing health insurance rates from Meridian to Canyon to Idaho, you would want to not do that on QuickFacts because it would be coming from 3 different sources. Okay, so you'll always be safe in QuickFacts if you compare cities to cities, counties to counties, states to states. That's my big tip. Okay, back to our question. How can we use QuickFacts to get a couple of charts that can help us apply for our hypothetical grant? So first thing, I always recommend sort by topic. So I want to get disability data. That's under health. It's easier to see. I'm going to click on the data that I want. Watch how fast we're going to get this. I call this the 2-click chart. I have disability highlighted here. See chart here. 1 click, 2 click. Voila, right? Awesome. I've got a chart already made. I don't have to import anything into Excel. I have the print screen set on my device to do the snipping on my Windows device, which you can set in options. So if I wanted to add this into my document, I could just push that snipping tool and I can snip it just like this. And that's what I'm going to recommend instead of using this screenshot chart because it's going to give you a lot of footnotes that you may not want. And you can just add in the source like so. And that's an easy and fast way to get a pre-made chart that you could paste right into your grant writing. Very simple. And to go back, one more note I want to make. This is a stable URL. So if you wanted to email this to Amy, hey, Amy, I just made this awesome chart you want to see, you could copy and paste this hyperlink and send it to her. Or save your work if you want to put it in your Word document. Go back to the tables, click like this, and we're back and it kept our geographies. Awesome. So I was interested in health. We had one. We were also interested in broadband, right? which I believe is under computer. So I want to see broadband internet subscription, just like that. It's bold. You know when it's bold, you know what that means. 2-click chart, 1 click, 2-click chart, like so, right? You're getting really good bang for your buck on time, right? How long did that take? I typed in 3 cities, and if I could spell better, it would have been done even faster. I picked the topics that I wanted. I created my charts. I snipped them into my document. I am done in under 5 minutes. Let's see what it looks like. Right, according to the Census Bureau's 5-year American Community Survey of Idaho's 5 largest cities, Caldwell has the highest percentage of individuals with a disability. Caldwell also has the lowest percentage of broadband connectivity in Idaho's 5 largest cities with 91.2% connectivity. So I hope you think or are persuaded that using quick facts improved a potential statement of need, because you could be that much more persuasive when you not just have like straightforward data that you can cite, but you can have these fun charts that can be easily pasted into your documents. You thought that was fun. The fun is only beginning, my friends. Okay. Perhaps my favorite tool for grant writing are these data profiles on the data.census.gov. And I'm going to show you why, because we get that much more in-depth data and even prettier charts, which is the part I like the most. Let's jump. Hypothetical exercise 2. Winter clothing for people with disabilities in Canyon County. An organization that works in the 83605 neighborhood wants to apply for funding to assist folks with disabilities that do not have the clothes necessary to keep warm in winter. Organization believes the demographic data will show that the need in 83605 is greater than other parts of Idaho. Can a data profile enhance a statement of need? I hope so, because I'm the one who wrote the question. Okay. Start data.census.gov. Okay. To get a data profile is very complicated. It's not. I'm just kidding. Really easy. Watch 83605. We're going to use that ZICTA, zip code tabulation area geography, right? I type that in here, just click on profile like this. Oh, we're reloading. Better, that's better. You click on this and it'll load like this. I've already got it preloaded. It sometimes takes a second to load these. It's pulling in a lot of data. So I'll just scroll through this so you can see all the great data that's here. You can see right now we've got charts in color. Things are really picking up. Right, top line information combining American Community Survey and the Decennial Census data, depending, right? So you can see age and sex data here. It's got a population pyramid. So you can see what age cohorts are the largest parts of a population or a geography, right? This is a data point. I think that'll be important, right? Language spoken at home. Why I really like these profiles is it doesn't just give you the data in a vacuum, right? It shows you the relative difference between your selected geography and the state at whole, right? So it's one thing to say that 29.2% of the population speaks a language other than English at home, but to say that it's relatively more, it's, you know, almost 3 times that of the whole state of Idaho is that much more persuasive. But we got language data here, native and foreign born population. We've got data, but also stratified into age for older population. You can scroll down. We've got income and poverty data, but also broken down by family. What's great is that you were able to get that poverty rate right from Quick Facts, but it gives it to you by age here. So I think it's worth checking Quick Facts and this profile in your grant writing to see if you can get perhaps a chart that's easy, that may be even more persuasive, like showing that 18% of the folks under 18 years old living in 83605 are considered under the poverty line. If I want the data in table form, I click on table like this, and I can put that in my writing if I cared. But I want to go to the data.census.gov table. I'm going to follow that hyperlink right here. So we've got education, right? We saw educational attainment in Quick Facts for high school and college. You can see more detailed here. You can surf up here to get to the specific topic you're looking for. So we were thinking about disability, right? It's going to show you relative to the whole state. Remember those questions we looked at in the Why We Ask page? Here we get our first example of where that data is available, right? It's not, you're not just going to get the total rate of disability, but broken down into the different categories, all here. And then you can also see we have family living arrangements, race and ethnicity. I don't want to run out of time, So I just want to show you some of the examples you could have pulled off the profile. Right? In our zip code area, the poverty rate is more than 40% higher than the state of Idaho. Almost 1/5 of children are considered in poverty. With the chart really hammers home our point. Right? With our outreach to folks with disabilities, we can give them that top line number and then show that we're aware that the types of disability varies greatly in our geography. And then we can also emphasize that, hey, we know that all of our outreach, to just do all of our outreach in English might not be sufficient. Now, we can see that with 29% of our geography speaking a language other than English at home, we're aware that we need to develop materials likely in Spanish as well. You can see all of that. And it was pretty easy, right? The same way as I showed you before, use that snipping tool, take the chart, throw it into your document. I might add a shadow like I like to do, and away you go. All right, third example. Sometimes you can't avoid it, right? You said, I don't want to go into the data.census.gov. It's scary. There's lots of options. It's not scary. It's fine. Don't be scared, Mac. We're going to get through this, okay? I'm going to show you the quick way, an easy way to pull up a table and to build a chart. It's like baking. If you know the correct sequence to input the ingredients, it's not that bad. So I'm going to show you that sequence right now with example number 3. Household receiving SNAP. You notice that we didn't, on those first 2 tools we looked at, we did not have any data about SNAP benefits, but you know, because you love surfing the Why We Ask question page, that there is a question about SNAP benefits on the American Community Survey. So that data is available. So I want to get that data, and potentially I want to build a unique chart because I can't build a bar graph in Quick Facts with SNAP benefits because SNAP benefits aren't on Quick Facts and neither are zip codes. So I can do that. I can make my own fancy chart on the data.census.gov. We're back again. Now, instead of typing the zip code in here, we're going to go to advanced search, like so. Okay. A lot going on here on the left, right? Just focus on geographies and topics, and you're going to get where you need to go most of the time, okay? Almost all the time. So if you do that, the most recent data will automatically populate, and the most used tables will come to the top of your search results. So this is really the best strategy, geography and topics. So we're dealing in zip code tabulation areas right now, right? You have to follow these prompts or it's going to get mad at you. You can't just type in 83605. It won't let you. You've got to select Idaho first. Okay, now is when you could go through here and pick out the different zip codes. That might take a long time. Or you could just type them in like this. So I was going to do the neighboring zip codes around 83605. So I was going to put in a few of these here so I can make a chart. 44. It doesn't take too long. 83669. That's a good one. What about 83687? I want to leave them out. They want to be included in our fun chart. 651. All right, that's sufficient. So you can see as we're adding zip codes, they're all added here. View all filters, you'll see all 6. Okay, so my geographies are here. Click search, I've got them. Now I want a topic, right? I'm interested in SNAP benefits, which is likely under poverty. These are pretty intuitive. The only ones that are a little more difficult are the housing ones. So if you have problems trying to find a table, you spend more than 10 or 15 minutes, send me an email. I'll help you. I don't want you searching on here too long, but I bet you'll be able to get it. So I went to poverty here because I bet SNAP benefits are related to poverty. I'll click this X. And if I look at my results, I can get poverty data here, but SNAP benefits are right here, S2201. I'll move this over. So you can see total households are up here. If I click my right arrow, you can see all the different zip codes I added here. If you want to take off margin of error to make it easier to see, you can do that. If you want to put the data into Excel, you can click here. Right? If you want to cite a chart in your work, as I'm going to put in a fancy footnote to make your grant writing that much fancier, click the cite button right here. You can copy it. We have 6 different citations available, including the famous Harvard citation. Very fancy. So you can get that right there. So you'll have the tables, but I personally like visualizations of data more than charts or more than data tables. Don't tell my colleagues in DC. I like things that are pretty. So I have the option for charts. Click on charts like this. I can make this descending if I want, right? So I could show that in the neighboring zip codes that 83605 has a higher percentage, and this is households, and I can make a chart out of any of these that I want. I just have to scroll and pick, but households is sufficient for what we're doing now. And I also have the option, go to chart, I can make a column chart too if I want. If I was pasting, I would probably use this one because it's smaller and it won't fit neater into a document, but you can use either bar or column. Both are good choices. So you could do is in the same way you could paste this into a document. You can see it like this, just like so, right? Fun. One more example. We are running low on time. We got too excited about the decennial census. That'll always happen to me. The question was, can I use the mapping feature for this this is more for outreach than it would be for grant writing, to get an idea of which neighborhoods I should emphasize my outreach in if I wanted to help those without health insurance in Ada County. And I just wanted to show you how you might do something like that. Advanced search. So neighborhood, remember, is our fun term for census tract, right? Follow the prompts. Idaho. So you want to select your county. I always recommend that. We're doing Ada County. Important part, all tracts in Ada County. Click search. Remember, just geography, topic. Not too bad. Oh, health insurance is its own topic. Excellent. Click that X. Let's try our first result. Why not? Oh boy. No, no, no. We've got what the kids call the friendly census stop sign. No need to be upset or panic. All you have to do when this happens, when you do, tracks in a large county, this will always happen. See this little link right here? Click open the table. Okay, problem solved. I just want to make sure you can see that. I want to show you how to make a map of the data. So you can see it's showing it by neighborhood. The best way to make a pretty map, boundaries, base map, boundaries, colors, base map, detail that's going to put in the streets. I click on boundaries. I add places going to put in the cities, as you can see there. So I went to base map, added the cities, boundaries, added a place right here. Then colors, you can move this opacity bar like this. If you get lost, you get too zoomed in, you want to see where you are. Or you can keep it about 60. I like to bring it down a little bit. And then I like to go to colors. I don't like the blues. I think they're a little hard to see. I scroll down. I like these yellows to browns. I find this easier for me to see. And then lastly, if I want to see the uninsured, I can go down here. It's showing percent uninsured right now, percent uninsured. This is the whole population. But I can also do it by different age cohorts too. I can map any of these that are in that table. Those right, in family households by race and ethnicity, and so on and so on. But you can see, like so, that now I've got a map. This is a normal distribution. Right, you can see it's a natural normal distribution here of the data. If I wanted to see the 20% of census tracts that have the highest uninsured rate, I would go to Quantal like this. And then you can see the ones colored in brown. Those are the 20%. So if I was making an outreach, if I was making an appeal for outreach, and I was going to say, we're going to use a data-driven, optimized approach to reach as many people with the limited resources that we have, you could say, we're going to focus on the tracts colored in brown here, because we know that the folks that the highest, the neighborhoods that are contributing the most to the uninsured rate are in the tracts colored in brown and dark orange. So you have that option when you change it to classes as well. This is also a sticky URL. You can email this to a colleague. You can email to Amy loves new emailer her census maps. She likes to see all of your maps, so go ahead and do that. This is a sticky URL that you can save as well. Also, you can print over here and so on. All right. We've got some slides where you can get more information on data gems, data dissemination training. These trainings are free. I've got a few popular trainings. I'll show those at the end of the next one as well. These are 3 of the most popular ones that I'm doing right now in the Pacific Northwest. The population and migration. People are excited about the new population data It's really a big hit is that middle one, the emergency planning one. People really like to know how to use these emergency planning tools, both for planning and responding to natural disasters. These are great tools that there's the data on data.census.gov doesn't completely cover. They can really used in conjunction with data.census.gov to help you with emergency planning. And then also the census data for tribal areas training is really fun. So we've got unique tools to help you get data for tribal areas. So those are also available. All these trainings, they're free, but really what they are, they're paid for with your taxpayer money. You could think of it like you've already paid for the subscription through the end of the fiscal year, through 30 September. So you might as well use these free trainings, right? For your organization, I'll do large groups like this. Also, I like doing one-on-ones too, whatever you need. So if you have questions or you want trainings for your organization, if you want to, or even the stuff we just covered now for grant writing, for outreach to get a better idea of how American Community Survey data can be leveraged to make you more effective, reach out. Send me an email. We'll set up a time, a free video session like this. And I have gone 1 minute over. It causes me great shame. I'm going to pause now, and we are going to take a break because to go 2 straight hours on census data is too much for even me. Get yourself a cup of coffee, play on your phone, and we will be back at 2:15. And make sure you come back because Census Business Builder is coming up. So you don't want to miss that. That's my favorite tool. Mac, is there anything to add before we take a break?
No, I think you covered all the questions, and I did respond to some of them already.
Hello and welcome back. For those of you that were here for our first session, or just welcome to those of you just joining us for data at your fingertips using census tools to achieve success. My name is Amy Luft, and I'm the communication team lead here at Compass. Compass strives to reach out to all residents of Ada and Canyon counties. So we ask you to help us track how we are doing by participating in a poll that I'll open shortly on your screen. If you completed the poll at the start of session 1, you don't need to take it again. You can just close out of it. But if you are joining us just for session 2, I do encourage you to take the poll. That is, responses though are anonymous and your participation is voluntary, but it really does help us out. In this session, you'll take a deep dive into Census Business Builder, which can be used to find and map demographic, social, economic, housing, and business data at custom scales. It's a valuable tool and resource for analyzing and displaying multiple types of data in one place to help you in your planning from everything from small neighborhoods to multiple counties. Brian Berman is a data dissemination specialist who works primarily in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And Mac Treese is also a data dissemination specialist serving customers in Northern California and Hawaii. Brian will be leading today's discussion, and Mac will be moderating the chat and helping you with your questions. Just a quick few housekeeping items. First of all, for good sound quality, all participants have been muted. If you do have questions, please type them in the chat and Mac will help you out. This presentation is being recorded and will be available later on Compass's YouTube channel, as well as Brian's slides. And I'll send an email follow-up later with an evaluation form and links to both the YouTube channel and the slides. This session has been approved for one AICP certification maintenance credit. And as a reminder, again, I will be opening a poll in just a moment. If you have not completed the poll already in the first session, I do ask that you complete that to help us out. And with that, Brian, I will turn the screen over to you and let's get started.
Wonderful. Thank you, and great to be back. Hope you guys had a nice break. And thank you to those of you joining us for the first time. If I haven't introduced myself, I am Brian. I'm the local census data trainer for the Pacific Northwest. I'm based out of Seattle. So I work Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. So if you have needs for data trainings in the future, I'm your local source. We'll provide my email in a way if you to sign up for those trainings. I'm very grateful to have my esteemed colleague, Mac Treese, joining me as well. She's going to be answering your questions in the chat. She may come off mic if she thinks that answering a question for the whole group is more appropriate. She has excellent judgment, so I rely on her to help us with that. Today, we're doing Census Business Builder. This is part 2. This is a wonderful tool. This is my personal favorite tool of all the tools at the Census Bureau. I call it the crown jewel of our tools because it can do the most. It's comprehensive. It can show. I'm going to show you a lot of different ways that it could be used. I'm going to begin when I do the demonstration to really focus on how a small business owner or a government entity might use the tool to help attract businesses or to acquire funding. But then if you're patient with me, I will show you toward the end of the hour how nonprofits and community organizations are using the tool to help them better plan and get a better picture of customized geographies. I would say I do this training more than any of the other ones that I do. And I would say probably more than half of the Census Business Builder trainings I do are for government organizations and nonprofits because they find the ability to build summary reports of American Community Survey data for customized geographies. And when I say that, I just mean a combination of zip code, a combination of counties, a combination of census tracts. They find that to be incredibly useful. So that's coming up. Get excited. It'll be fun. I promise. All right. Let's start here with the data sources. This is the first ever cloud-based data tool from the Census Bureau. It's getting input from a lot of different sources. You can see the 9 on the screen here. It's your old friend, the American Community Survey. We'll talk about this a little bit in depth in a second, but I want to emphasize also that we're getting data from a lot of these great economic censuses, in that if you're writing or working on economic data or jobs data, this is a great first place to start because it's the easiest way to access a lot of business and economic data. So I'm just providing this slide so you get a picture of all the different surveys and censuses that are included, including also consumer spending data, which I'll show you how to access as well. The demographic, socioeconomic, and housing data is all coming from the American Community Survey. We talked about this more in depth in session 1. I'll invite you to visit that to learn a little bit more on how the American Community Survey was developed from the decennial. The important takeaway for those of you joining us for session 2 is that the American Community Survey is done on a yearly basis. 3.5 million surveys sent out every year. It's very large now, covering more than 40 topics, and it's released on a yearly basis. On 1 year and 5-year estimates, we will, in Census Business Builder, be using 5-year estimates, which the most recent 5-year estimate is the 2019 to 2023 5-year estimate. The slide is back again. It's showing you all the different topics. I wanted to show this to you again. I know because you really liked it the first time, but also because in the reports that we're going to build in Census Business Builder, they have a lot of American Community Survey data, but it's not entirely comprehensive. I don't want you to think that in a report in Census Business Builder, if a data point is not provided, it doesn't exist. That I want you to have this as a resource to be able to see, hey, even if it's not in the Census Business Builder reports that we're going to make, perhaps the data does exist, and this is a great starting place because these are all the different topics that are covered by the current survey. We'll go back to our tools. We're back again. Now I know after session 1, this is your new homepage. This is a great place to start if you want to know if a topic exists on the American Community Survey, if you can get specific data. If we ask a question about it on the survey, then you could be rest assured that the data does exist, even if it's not in the Census Business Builder report. You can get it on data.census.gov or another tool. We went through last time and we looked at disability. Now I want to show you a different grouping. For community planning, we can see this is commuting data. So you can see here more information about how it's used for transportation planning by DOT. And then I want you to take a look at all the questions that it asks about commuting data, right? It's going to ask you where you started before you left for work, how you're getting to work, are you carpooling to work, what time you leave for work, and how long it takes you to get to work, right? And I want to show you Because you're like, well, those are great questions, but how is it really created, or what does the Census Bureau do with these questions? Well, back here on data.census.gov, which we spent a lot of time with on the last presentation. Again, I encourage you to take a look at that if you'd like a little bit more training on this. But this is how those questions are tabulated. So you can see, right, it's going to create categories. This is commuting data by county for Idaho. That's here. You can see the and they're broken down into different, you can see total male and female in this one table, different types of carpools. So I scroll down. Place of work. Are you working outside of your county of residence where you're living? And then this is the fun part. Look at down here at the bottom. Time departure to work. They took all those answers for what time people leave for work, and they put them into different categories to make it easier for you to analyze the data, broken up by half hour in the morning. And they also stratified categories for the commuting time as well. So you could take this data and also map it like we're doing here. We did this a little bit last time. So this is by county. If I go up here, I can I can create a map under any of these topics. I just made one for the percentage of people working outside their county of residence, and you can get a picture for Idaho as a total. So this is great for your planning. You get a picture. I just wanted you to be able to see that. So it's not just, I don't want you to think that the Americans Community Survey data is only available on Census Business Builder, but data.census.gov is a great source as well. It's your friend, the geography slide, back again, this time with a fun orange box. You can get demographic socioeconomic data at multiple zip codes. You could do multiple places, a city, right? Boise, Meridian, Nampa, all cities. But when we're using the report function in Census Business Builder, we want to stay inside this orange box. This is really counties and states, because most of the economic surveys are done at the smallest geographies, the county and the state level as well. So when you're running reports, if you want to run a business report for Boise, I'm going to highly recommend that you run it for Ada County. If you run a report for a city like Meridian, but you don't get a lot of results back, the key is to just change it to Canyon and run the report again. So if you stay in this box, Census Business Builder is especially easy to use. Okay, what are we doing with Census Business Builder today? I'm going to show you how to map Census Business Builder, the only program that can map multiple variables at once. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to create comprehensive industry reports. You can do all of the jobs or industries inside of a county, and then we can also be more industry specific. We're going to use an example today of a person opening up a new restaurant and how they might use the tool. If we have time, we'll do number 3 on how someone with opening a restaurant, as an example, might use the mapping to optimize customer outreach by mapping different variables. But really, we want to make sure we have enough time to focus on 4. This is how nonprofits and community organizations, healthcare clinics are all using the Census Business Builder to create summary demographics. So what we're able to do is we're able to get a report for a combination of zip codes, for example, or we'll do an example today of the neighborhood surrounding a public hospital, right? I work with local libraries in Washington that use this report to get an idea of the demographics surrounding each of their branches. So because Census Business Builder provides data down to the census tract level, the tract being just about 4,000 people, you're able to customize a geography, a combination of tracts or zip codes, and then it will create summaries and aggregate the data for you in an easy to use report. So that's coming up. Get excited, but enough preamble. Let's jump into the tool. So if you type Census Business Builder into the Google, it'll take you to this front page. Mac will kindly put a link into the chat for you so you get an idea of what's there. There's a lot going on here, as I know. I recommend starting, because whatever is visualized in the map is going to be added. Let's actually reload this. So whatever is visualized in the map here is going to be in the legend and the table. I recommend putting in a geography first before you do anything else. So we'll focus on our first examples here of Ada. Awesome. You want to make sure you get the right one. So we're really interested in the county. We'll just have to be a little patient with it here. Just a little patient with it. I would say it has a case of the Mondays, but it's a Tuesday, so no excuses now, Census Business Builder. Just want to give it a chance to load. And start closing a few of these. Thanks for being patient with us here. Maybe that will help. Sorry, it's just taking a second. I appreciate you waiting with me here. Try it one more time. Just give it a second here. Sorry, it's taking a second here. Grateful that you're being patient with me here. Spinning, spinning, spinning. So I'll start talking a little bit about the variables that are available as it begins to load here. So you can see there's a lot of different possible variables that we can put on the map once it stops spinning. I'll start over here. So there's a lot of great business data, and then there's a lot of great consumer and demographic data. We'll do that second as the second example. When we are, and we're going to have a discussion a little coming up here about NAICS codes, the North American industry codes. When you want to analyze the size of a potential report, it's great to set this map on all employer establishments for the county we're looking at. So we'll come back, and that's under business annual, so we don't want to forget that. Well, one example, the first example of a great way. So if you're looking at a macro level, you wanted to see economic data for Ada County and Idaho counties generally. Great slots to look at our business quarterly and jobs data. So you can see total establishments is a possibility here, but also it can do level change, which I think is really neat. And if you go to the secondary category, click this blue one. So I can do two at a time. So right now it's set on primary. You know which variable it's under because it has the blue line under it. So I can show rate of change like that. And then I can also do, if I want to pick a secondary variable, see how I just clicked it like this? I have the option, I can also, if we started here and we picked the rate of change and the level change here, then I can also go to jobs. And under jobs, I can show jobs created, jobs destructed, and I can also show net job creation as well by doing that. And you can see that the variables, when they're added, they come up here. See, it's beginning to load. You just have to be gentle with it. It comes. Just have to be gentle with it. Just have to be gentle with it. So I might go a little bit out of order. So I might come back to the mapping here in a second. I just want to try it one more time. Because I'm convinced third time will be the charm. Still spinning. Okay, that's okay. We'll go a little bit out of order. So well, I'll come back to the different ways you can map. Well, what's really more useful than the mapping really is the ability to create these reports. So what I'll do is I'll show you as we're waiting for the mapping, some of the what's in these wonderful reports that come out of Census Business Builder. So to get a report for a specific county, we just have our geography specified here, and we just click Create Report like this. And I've got it preloaded like this. So this is the report that will come. And you can see there's a lot of great information. The way to search through the different parts of the report are here in the table of contents on the left. As we scroll down, right now it's just mapping establishments, but you can see imports and such. So these are all the different variables that are available to be mapped, that are available from the American Community Survey. Right, you can see these are the 5-year estimates. Under each of these boxes, it'll tell you the source, because we looked at that first slide. It showed you all the different sources of the data in Census Business Builder. So you can see a lot of great ACS data is available to you via Census Business Builder, giving you different percentages stratified by age and working age, race and ethnicity data. We go down to socioeconomic. Right, median household income is here, educational attainment, percent in poverty, employed, disabled, so unemployed would be the converse of this, right? Percent with health insurance. Some of that great commuting data is here as well. And then again, explanation in this box on the right. Right, if I click on any variable, you'll get a bar chart over here. What I might recommend is if I go to settings and I click on show sources like this source column will appear. So if you want to be taken directly to the source data of anything that you see in a report from Census Business Builder, just follow this link and it'll take you to the profile for the American Community Survey data. So you can see all this data, right? Speaking Spanish, foreign born, veteran data, all here. Housing characteristics are in here as well, right? You can get the vacancy rate. You can, if you're interested in median and average rent, that's here as well. You're interested in broadband connectivity, that's under housing, not necessarily intuitive, but that's where it is. You can get that information here. And then this is the different occupation sectors that come from the American Community Survey. All available here. You can follow the table again, following the hyperlink right there. But what's really special in Census Business Builder, and it's difficult to get this data this easily anywhere else, are all the business data that are listed here on the left. Right, I can see the total number of establishments in Ada County and then divide it up into number of employees. I can see employment per employer. I can see population per employer. I can see how many establishments have entered, right, each year and growth over time. I can see the different age of different firms, right? So if you're interested in Ada County's economy relative to similar counties in the West, right? You want to see it relative to maybe Canyon in Idaho, or you want to compare it to King or Multnomah or Clark in Nevada, right? You could pull one of these reports for those different counties as well, and then you could see, do they have a particular type of number of establishments with fewer than 5 employees, right? Or population per employer, right? You could use multiple ones of these reports to create an argument for why a new business starting in Ada would be preferential to a competing geography by having these competing reports, right? Somebody might use one of these reports if you had a business in Idaho and you were trying to decide which county it made most sense to expand into. Maybe you're a business in California, sorry, Mac, that, thinking that Idaho might be better off. You could see the relative differences between, right, Alameda County and Ada County. You can see the differences, right, in terms of population per employee, payroll per employee, all that's here. You scroll down, you'll get revenue data as well, right? Revenue employers, average revenue per employer is here, per employee is here as well. We've got data also. And then again, you want to get to the specific source of which economic survey or census is giving you this data. It'll tell you if you hover over it, and it'll take you to the source if you follow that link. Non-employer business means a business without a paid employee. Think of it like a mom and pop sandwich shop, as an example. If you don't have a paid employee, you are a non-employer business. So if you're interested in non-employer firms, that data is separated out. You can get that information. If that's the type of business, if someone's starting their first business, perhaps they want to know what this data is, how much revenue other non-employer businesses are making, so they can make a more informed decision, right? Like I think I saw it's something like 50% of small businesses fail within 5 years, right? Our hope in teaching folks how to use this tool to help for planning is we want to bring that percentage down, right? Our goal is for everyone to stay in business. A healthy economy is good for everyone, right? Our nonprofits and government alike, we all want our businesses to stay healthy. We want people to make informed, good decisions. And we hope you can help spread the word that this data is available for free for small business owners so that they can make the best informed decisions. That although I live in Washington, I'm around Amazon and Microsoft, the data isn't just for Amazon, right? It's for small businesses too. It's collected by the Census Bureau. And through this great tool, it's available to a small business looking to start or expand so that they're making the most informed decision and hopefully the most effective decision. We got workforce data here if you're interested in folks, the different working categories in Ada County. These quarterly business, this is really great stuff. This will show you the number of establishments percent change from 23 to 24, but also it will show you, right, the change in wages, right, and average weekly wages and percent change in wages, right, in the county. So if you're looking, let's say you are that mom and pop sandwich shop, but your sandwiches are just so popular, we got to open up a second location in Canyon. How are you going to get an idea of what those wages should be? You can use Census Business Builder, the quarterly business data, to help you get an idea for planning what wages are in your locality or interested locality. Yeah, building permit data as well. This business comparison is pretty exciting. So this helps both on a planning standpoint from government, but also if you're not sure which type of sector you want to go into or which sectors are most profitable, right? You can see both non-employer firms and employer, how many there are, total number of employees, payroll, revenues, all here comparing. These are the big 20 with NAICS codes. I'm going to talk about that in a second. There's no avoiding it. So you can get an idea, but more helpful perhaps are these key ratios for these big 20 industries. You can see revenue per employer, revenue per employee, population per employer, right? You want to see where a particular type of industry is oversaturated or undersaturated. That data is available here. And then for under non-employer businesses, you can get data about demographics of ownership. You can see by race and ethnicities and by minority and non-minority, all here. And at the bottom here, look at this, is super fun. This isn't available in any other census tool. You can get consumer spending data. And look at all these great categories that Census Business Builder provides. So on for all different types of businesses, right? So they get an idea of consumer expenditures per household in a locality. And you can get this down to the neighborhood level, not just the county. The consumer spending and the demographic, socioeconomic data is down to that neighborhood level. So you could even get a better picture of which neighborhoods in Ada County are spending the most on apparel, are spending the most, even broken down further, men's, women's, footwear, right? Spending the most on education. You can even see, right? Pet food is on here, pet services. We scroll down, food consumed at home, right? You're trying to attract new grocery stores into your community. You might use something like this. Household services, you're opening up a lawn care service. You can see which neighborhoods are spending the most on lawn and garden services, household data, on travel data, things like that. And then perhaps if you are a restaurant, you might be interested in consumer expenditures on dining out. And you could get this as well. So all this is here. If someone was going to use this profile, as they wanted to append it to a funding request to a bank or a grant, something like that, but you don't want all of the data included, you can use this pencil and you can hide certain parts of it. Maybe I don't want supply chain. So if I do that, I click the eye like that, and it will take it off the report. Then I can go to export and print as a PDF, and you could print it or create a PDF that you would attach to a funding request. So that, but a really easy way, oops, still spinning. Still spinning. So hoping if we gave it a second, it might be working. Hopefully it didn't take the afternoon off. But that's a great way. So as you can see, when we click this create report right here, oh, it's loading slowly. Oh, it's coming. It's going to come. Things are happening. Okay. But when all we did was click this create report, and we got this, over here, this comprehensive report on all these different variables from consumers to business and so on. What's really neat about Census Business Builder, oh, look at that. You guys are excited. Well, we're not going to test our luck too much. So right now we're mapping. I'll minimize this for a second. Thanks for being patient with me this afternoon. I appreciate you, by the way. It's showing two variables at once. So I'm not going to zoom out now because I don't want to test our luck and I don't want it to load too much, but it's color coded based on both variables, the primary variable, the different colors. And then if I scroll down in the legend, you can see the secondary variable, the size of these circles. So the larger these circles, the larger net job creation would be. So I did business data, but I can also do demographic data, socioeconomic data. So if I wanted to get a picture of percent 65 and older, see how it's on secondary, so that's going to be secondary. If I click on primary, I can go up here and I can see percent 65 and older and percent in poverty if I wanted. So if I zoom out enough, beautiful. All right, so now I'm getting a picture. And why Census Business Builder is neat is that it crosses state lines. So it's going to show you in this legend whatever's visualized on the map here. All right, so if you wanted to get a picture of all of Idaho, you could do something like this. And you could see percent in poverty and percent 65 and older at the same time. And you could use any combination of these demographic, socioeconomic characteristics you want to map. Or you could just run a report and get all of it at once. So it can do that, which is pretty cool. All right. So let's pretend you're a business. Like we are that sandwich shop, mom and pop sandwich, original name. But you don't want all of the businesses in Ada County, the very big ones and the very small ones included. You just want to get data about restaurants or similar restaurants so that you could get data about revenue and wages so that you can make an even more informed decision about whether it makes sense to open up a second location. we can run these reports that we just did, not just for all industries, but we can customize to any, it's thousands of options really. Now you have the option, if you click on edit industries, let's see how it does. Let's go back. So you can edit industries and select out of the options, but it only gives you a limited menu. Right? So if I'm at food services, you see if I scroll over here, each of these has a code. NAICS, NAICS, North American Industry Classification System code. And all of these are 6 digits long, which might be too specific. And that's why I don't recommend selecting a report just by typing in a name here or selecting from here, but taking an extra minute and visiting the NAICS website, which Mac will kindly put into the chat. This is where you can find the correct NAICS code so you're running the best report possible for your small business. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So the first step, we're on the main page now. If I scroll down, click on 2022 right there, all I did was here, I scroll to here. These are the parent codes. I'm going to explain this because it's not that intuitive. So every industry or every type of business is classified into these 20 categories. Some are fairly intuitive, right? Real estate, you could probably guess what that is. Construction, manufacturing, retail, health, right? I'm opening a dentist's office. I bet it's under 62. But some of these are not, right? What is information? Anybody want to guess? I bet you won't guess. If you're looking and you're trying to find what's the best NAICS code for my search, you can start on this page and then click this link and follow on. What do they mean by information? To get more information about a topic, you can follow this hyperlink and it will give you 10 paragraphs of lovely technical prose, which I know you love as much as I do. But what I would do if I was saving time is I would just scroll through this list here. That the way it works is that every, I guess, sector that has a 5.1 included in its listing here is part of this greater information parent code. So if you're wondering which, like from music publishing to periodical publishing to book publishing, software publishing, radio and television broadcasting is information, telecom, all of these are part of that greater parent code 51. And the way to think of it, and I made this very exciting slide here to try to help explain it, using our example, the 72. So every business every business that has a 72 in its NAICS code between 2 and 6 digits is included in a report that's run for a 2-digit code. So for our example, if you were to run a report for all accommodation and food services, you would get all food services and drinking places, which includes restaurants and bars, and you would get all accommodations, so hotels, motels, casinos, and RV parks and recreation camps. So it's a little counterintuitive. The smaller the NAICS code, the larger the sample in your possible report. So the goal is to probably run, for most people, the most specific they could get between 2 and 4 digit. I do not recommend going more specific, especially in a less populated state like Idaho, than 4 digit. I would not want to go more than 4 digit here because your sample size will not be big enough for you to get the best data possible. And then whether you want to run at a 2 or 3 or 4 digit, really you want to take a moment and try to think, why do I want this data? Am I a business looking to open a second location and I want to know about wages, right? Is my first hypothetical. It depends who you're competing with, right? If you're a restaurant and you compete with bars for employees, you probably want to include bars in your search when you want to get that wage data. So you might want to run at a 3-digit code that includes both restaurants and drinking places. Right? I grew up in Las Vegas. If I was opening a restaurant in Las Vegas, under no circumstances would I want to run a search at 72 because that would include the strip hotels, which have casino revenue, right? Which completely misshow what my possible revenues and wages would be, right? Higher wages, higher revenues in those strip casinos and strip restaurants. I would not want those included. I would want to get more specific. But I also used to live in Bellingham, Washington, which is a nice little town in the northwest of Washington, about 100,000 people. I think it's very possible that the hotels and the restaurants in Bellingham are competing in the same labor pool, especially with the higher minimum wage in this part of the state. And if you wanted to see what those combined wages would be, perhaps a smaller town might want to run at just the broadest possible NAICS code, that's 7.2. So it really all depends. It really all depends what you want that data for, okay? And I want to show you in the Census Business Builder what the differences in the size of the different searches will be. So I brought this up before. You're an annual. When you want to see the size of your potential sample, click on Business Annual, go to all employer establishments like this, and then click off. I'm going to open up this table here. I want you to keep an eye on this blue box here as we try different options. Right, so let's show you first what the 2-digit start, right? 72, that matches, that's good. So that's the broadest. This includes restaurants, bars, hotels, motels, RV parks. More time. Awesome. So you see I went from 16,000 to 1,200, right? This is the sample size you would get if you ran a report that included the restaurants, hotels, bars, all those, right? If I wanted to run a report that was just restaurant and bars, I would use that title that we looked up, that if I go into, right, the 722, right, the 3-digit that we looked up. Now it's down to 1150, right? And then if I wanted to see, like, let's say why I like going on this NAICS website. I'll go back. I click on restaurants, 72, right? All of these are included if I run a search at 72. When I see here, as I scroll down, that they don't use the term bar, is not the naming convention used, but drinking places. If I type bar, here, right? It's here, it's just all the way at the bottom. Granola bar, that's not what I want. But because I went on that NAICS website, I know that drinking places is the naming convention. So I can see what that, look, just 92. And so on. So really it depends. We'll run our search for food services. Perfect. Just like that. That matches. That makes sense. Now you can see when I run my report, you'll know it'll come up because I'm running a specific. So I'm going to do combination of bars and restaurants. Wonderful. You can see up here, it doesn't say all industries. Now it's specified. This consumer and socioeconomic data is all going to be the same because it's geography based. But the difference is under here in business. Now, you know it's different. It says cluster name, right? Food services and drinking places. So this is the total number of just restaurants and bars. And then you get that same information that we were getting before but just for industry specific. right? So you could do a 2-digit, 3-digit, 4-digit and get as broad or as specific as you want. But payroll per employee, right? So if you're a new restaurant looking to open, you can get specific data about other restaurants and bars combined together. And how old, the number of restaurants that are opening. Perhaps it's too small. I would search this. If you get an NA like this, run it at 2 digits and see if you can do it that way. The sample size might be too small. Right? How many non-employer firms, mom and pops sandwich shops, not just sandwiches, obviously, but how many of those have opened and what their revenue per firm per $1,000 is right here. Right? You can get data about the workforce. This quarterly business is super valuable, right? The number of establishments changed. How many restaurants have opened from 23 to 24? A percent change, right? That's all here, right? You want to get information about revenues. And we want to get about like what are other restaurants paying? That's here as well. Are wages rising in my specific industry? You can get that too, all by running this report by a specific industry topic. And again, you have the option, all these key ratio stuff will be published as well at the broadest. Again, these are those 2-digit NAICS codes here. And at the bottom, all that's consumer spending data. So this is a great option for a specific business to get the most detailed and be most informed if they're looking to open up a second location, a first location, or if you're working in government and you're trying to attract new businesses into your county, right? You're trying to get, I think you guys have one In-N-Out. You want to get another In-N-Out to come up to Idaho, right? Show them we have, right? You could show them this dining out away from home. We have a high dining out per household number here. Plus, look what the relative wages and revenues are for other restaurants in Ada County. So it could be used, these profiles could be used a lot of different ways. So pretty exciting, right? Pretty fun now that it stopped being a little grumpy. So the third way I want to show you beyond business is I was talking earlier about how nonprofits, how community organizations, libraries, hospitals, government. I've used the tool the way I'm about to show you in Seattle's got the World Cup coming next year, having neighborhood associations get a better idea of the demographics in their neighborhoods and helping them plan. Right? If you've got big events coming, you could use it that way. Lots and lots of endless options on how you might use what's going to be a customized geography. So I'm going to do first an example of a combination of zip codes. Right. First, the way I would do that is type in the first zip code you want here, like so. And then I'll pick some new variables, right? I'm interested, let's say I want to know percent under 5 years. Percent with health insurance. Why not? Okay, so if you wanted to create a combination of Canyon County zip codes to get aggregate American Community Survey data, right? You wanted to know the combination of, let's say, 3 of these area zip codes here, and you don't want to just create a table in data.census.gov and export it into Excel and then, sum the tables. This is a much faster way to do that. To do that, we're on detailed, go to region view here, click on create region, and watch how I'm going to create my customized geography. Watch how easy this is. I've got my pointer set here. 1. See how they're added over here? 2. So let's just say I'm interested in the aggregate data or what are the aggregate demographic and socioeconomic data for these 4 zip codes together. Save edits, run report. I'm actually going to take this off. We don't need it. Reset. Sometimes it takes a second here. Awesome. See? You have faith in it. All right. See, I've got this custom region over here. My 4 zip codes. It'll map with both variables. Which of the 4 are here? The 4 zip codes I'm interested in, but the really cool part, it's under consumer and residence. Look what it does here for you. It's combining the population of the 4 zip codes. It's giving you a combined percentage of the 4 zip codes for % under 5, % under 18, % 65 and older. Right? If you're like, what is that percentage, not just for one, but for all, it'll create that summary aggregate data for you. And you get race and ethnicity data as well that way. Scroll down, same thing. It's going to take an average of the income for all 4 zip codes and put them together for you. Same for % in poverty, % employed, % disabled, and so on and so on. Right? Some of that great commuting data is here as well. And so you would have to, right, you're interested in % speaking Spanish, % foreign born, % veterans, all that's here. And also the housing data is here as well. Right, pretty neat. So I was able, all by creating this custom region, to create an aggregate report of any customized geography that I want. So I can even get more specific than zip code. I could do census tracts, and I'll do an example of, let's say, a public hospital in Boise. But in order to do that first, I'd have to know what the tract is, right? I'm sure you all know the census tract of your local healthcare provider. I'm sure I know I do. Just don't ask me what it is. So what I did, sorry, data.census.gov, click this locator icon here, and then type the address. I'm going to do Vibro Hospital in Boise. You just type the address and the zip here. Awesome. So you can see what I want is this right here, Census Tract 20 in Ada County. So what I would do if I was, so now that I know I want Tract 20 and I know which census tract my healthcare center is in, right? I want to use this to create a picture of the neighborhood surrounding this healthcare facility, right? So they better help with their planning. And I can add as many census tracts as I like. So what I would do is start with a search of the zip code to get it more focused, 83709. It will take me there. And then, so pick this, put the zip code in here first of the location that you're going to use to help focus the tool. Minimize this. And then you know that it is 20. Which is 1920, right here. Awesome. Okay, so we know where it is. Oh, I want to zoom out. Actually, let's zoom out. Okay, so let's edit our region again, but we'll trash our last search. So now I'm going to do the same thing again, but at a neighborhood level. So I know that the hospital is in this tract, and I can now build out in a circle the immediate neighborhood, right? Because most neighborhoods don't nest into, evenly into different census geographies, right? Into whether like a zip code or a city, right? That a neighborhood could often cross zip code lines. I know of the neighborhoods in Seattle that are just 7 census tracts that cross 3 zip codes, right? So zip codes really aren't that useful. This is the best tool to get a picture of a local neighborhood. As you can see, they are added here. I can take as many as I want. You could go as broad or as small as you like. I recommend using pointer so that you can be precise. think I've made my point, right? So we're just looking at the immediate neighborhood surrounding this healthcare center. And again, you could use this in any number of ways, right? From a library to a community center to a senior center, right? You want to get all those great ACS variables aggregated and summarized in one easy to use report. You would just do this, right? Custom region, select my different tracks, knowing that this is the center, right? And we just want everything immediately around it. Click Save Edits. Click Report. Look at that. Right? Those are what? That's like 20 or so. 20 different census tracts. When you want to save a map to use, I would do this custom feature and then print this instead of trying to print screen this, because it's so dynamic. As you zoom around, this legend will change. If you just want to get relative differences of health insurance and percent over 65 as our example, I would use this custom region and create this report, because this map can be easily printed using export print PDF. So that's the best way to export a map, is to create this custom region like I did here, and then you could add as many of these as you like, right? That no government authority is going to tell you what geography, right? You can pick your own geography now. It can be whatever you want it to be. And look, as we scroll down, right? It's 80,000, right? Look at it, it's aggregate. That's how you know you did it right, right? That the combination, right? It's about 20, right? About 20 neighborhoods. The tract is about 4,000 people. That makes sense. About 80,000 for population. So if you were working with Vibra, right, and helping them try to get a better picture of the community that they're immediately serving right around their campus, you could have this information. What percentage of that neighborhood is under 5 years old, or what percent is under 5 years old? You have race and ethnicity data. What percent is over 65 years old, right? How you might want to optimize services if you're a community center, right? If there's a higher percentage of people over 65, or a higher percentage of people under 5, or if there are a high percentage of people speaking Spanish, right? Or, because this is great commuting data, right? If you're planning for, if there's like a big event or a big project, and you can see in your immediate neighborhood, hey, there's a high percentage of people that don't have any vehicle available, right? Maybe we need to work with the city and the county to make sure that there are more public transportation options available, depending on that neighborhood. And you don't have to just rely on the pre-made census geographies. You can make your own geography using that custom region, right? All these different ways. You're working with veterans. You want to see how many veterans are in a customized neighborhood. Boom, right here like this. And so
We
you can
do
see
have a
all this
question.
great data is here, right? You're interested in income, and right, you just want to use this to get a picture of, let's say you're working in a neighborhood association. Who is my neighborhood, right? What do I need to know about them? Do I need disability, right? Do I have a higher percentage of folks with a disability? Do we need to work with our local government on some of the curbs, right? Make it easier for people to cross streets, things like that. All
Hey,
that is
Brian,
here, right? Yes.
we do have a question. When you showed the custom aggregate of the 4 zip codes earlier, it
Mhm.
showed a comparison to the entire US as a whole. Is there a way that you could change that or compare it to 2 different custom aggregate areas? I don't think that's possible, but just wanted to double check with you there.
It would do. That's a great question. Thank you for that great question. If we went here, it'll do it in this chart right here. Let's say I go back to 83687. I go back here. I'm going to edit my region, put it in the trash. I like that custom tract. I know it's sad to throw that away. So if I go back to my pointer, I select out some zip codes like that. If I go save edits, it will do it right here. It won't do it in the report, but you can get the comparison on this front ranking with your primary variable. So if you don't want this chart to be in percent health coverage, go up here and change your primary variable to percent in poverty, and you'll get that. And then over here, you could even do a comparison between any two you want on 4 more variables. And to change those, you just click your friend, Mr. Pencil, scroll down, percent employed, and now that's on here. And if you want to move this into the primary variable, click the star and see how it became the primary variable like that. And then in the primary got moved into this box like this. So you could compare any two of your custom zip codes on the right here, but you'll get that bar chart you're looking for on this table, but not in the, you can't edit what's included in these reports on the side. These are just set as they are. Do I have any other questions on the Census Business Builder?
I think that
So
was
before I
it.
go,
Yeah.
awesome, thank you. Thank you again for being so patient with the tool this afternoon. It works really well, I promise. Just gets a case of the Mondays. Before I go, I do want to highlight some of the available trainings. I talked about this in the last hour. I'll include these in the slides for your reference. This one in particular is very popular right now. Learn how to use these on-the-map tools for emergency planning. You could use this in conjunction with Census Business Builder and the mapping and data.census.gov. This is where you would use these to get worker data, and then if there's a natural disaster declared, it will provide American Community Survey data for a customized disaster area using this tool right here. So this is a really great training. For any of these trainings you're interested in, they're all free. They're actually paid for with your taxpayer dollars. You've already paid for them for the year. If you want more help on Census Business Builder or any of those other trainings I have listed there, please send me an email. We'll set up a video training just like this, and you'll be on your way. And before I finish, I want to thank Amy one more time for helping us out, setting this up, getting this great group together. We could not have done it without you. We are really grateful for your partnership. So thank you, Amy, and thank you all.
Thank you, Brian and Mac. Really great information today. As I mentioned before, the video of today's presentations, both first and second sessions, as well as the slides, will be posted later on Compass's website. So if you want to go back for reference on any of the things we talked about, including the additional trainings that Brian just showcased, you will be able to access those. And I will send out links to those once they are posted, as well as a link to the evaluation. So thank you all again for attending. Thank you, Mac and Brian, for some really great information. Really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.